how to find a trusted guide while you're on the anxiety recovery journey. When I was dealing with anxiety, it was one of the most frustrating times of my life. I went to doctors, I went to therapists, I went to specialists, I went to alternative medicine. I did anything and everything the right thing to do to get this problem fixed. Basically, all I heard was, yeah, all you can do is just cope or manage with these symptoms. And it was so frustrating because I was like, I don't want to cope or manage. I want to get better. When I was finally able to recover, I looked back at it and I realized something. I realized technically I was going to the wrong people. I was going to people that specialized in coping or managing with symptoms. But nobody really specialized in anxiety recovery. Nobody was truly a recovery specialist. And so what I want to do in this video is I'm going to give you some action steps on how to find the recovery specialist, what questions to ask, and what to look for to make sure that you're with the right person. So let's get started. So like I mentioned, when it comes to anxiety recovery, it is complicated. It's not as easy to navigate with any other problem, right? You have finance issues, you go to an accountant. You have medical issues, you go to a doctor. You have, litigation issues, you go to a lawyer. But when it comes to anxiety, what does that mean? And the truth is that there's a lot of people that help with anxiety, but just because they help with anxiety doesn't mean that they help you overcome those symptoms. They can just have their own modality that helps find relief. A nutritionist could say, well, if you're dealing with anxiety, let's change your diet up and ease that anxiety, right? They might cut out caffeine or they might change your diet up. But are they somebody that helps you overcome your symptoms? And so the first thing I want to mention is, theoretically, anybody could be a recovery specialist. It could be a doctor. There might be a doctor that knows exactly what's going on, that understands nervous system sensitization, that understands why you're experiencing these symptoms, and knows what to do to help you overcome it. It could also be a therapist. It could be a coach. It could be your priest. It could be anyone in your community. You might know recovery, but it could fall into any domain. And so what a lot of people deal with when it comes to anxiety recovery is understanding the difference between credentials versus qualification. So when we look at credentials, it's very similar to what we see in healthcare, right? Credentialed is somebody that has formal recognition, right? So they have a certification, they have a license, and they also deal with compliance, right? They have rules and regulations that they have to abide by. That is credentials, right? You see credentials with things like medicine, right? If you break your leg, you want to go to somebody that's credentialed and resolving that issue. But credentials doesn't necessarily mean qualified at the same time. Now, when I'm talking about qualifications, I'm talking about somebody who's had experience with this specific problem. They also have the skills and competence to resolve this problem, and they have outcomes. They have backing. They can show that, look, like we've done this multiple times. Now, in an ideal world, you would want somebody that has both, right? You would want somebody that is credentialed in anxiety recovery that's also qualified, that's had tons of experience. But when it comes to recovery, those two things aren't aligned. And that's what makes it so difficult when it's on the recovery journey, because who is that person? Technically, somebody could be qualified, but they could be a therapist. They could be a coach. They could be like I mentioned, a priest. They could be a doctor. They could be somebody that just really knows what's happening. But how do you know? There's no official credential for it. And so what happens is that I often find anxiety sufferers get stuck in this loop because they constantly keep going to credentialed people, getting disappointed. And then when they find somebody that, they want to move forward with, the first thing they ask is, what are your credentials, right? You'll even see it on comments too on this channel. Like, what are your credentials of helping people? At what time does maybe credentials not matter? I'm here in Austin, Texas. It's a big tech city. One of the things that a lot of these tech companies, like Google's right there, Meta's right behind it, they look for software engineers that have a lot of experience. For them, credentials is not that important. It doesn't matter what school you went to. It doesn't matter if you have an MBA. It doesn't matter about any of these things. What matters is, can you do the work? How experienced are you? And there's a lot of people that just learned coding by themselves, and they're really good at it. They were self-motivated when it came to learning coding. And that, in a weird way, is even more impressive, right? And so it's important to understand that these two things aren't always the same thing. And so when you're going through the recovery journey, understand that just because someone's credentialed doesn't necessarily mean they know anxiety recovery. At the same time, though, just because someone says they know anxiety recovery doesn't mean they actually know. And so if you're on the journey and if you're finding a guide or if you're seeing somebody that you might want to work with, here are some questions that I would recommend asking this guide. And if you are not getting clear answers, then chances are they might not be the right person when it comes to recovery. The first thing I would ask this person is, do you think that you can overcome these symptoms? When I went to these doctors, when I went to therapists, I would ask them, hey, is recovery even possible? And they would say no. And the reason why they said no wasn't because recovery wasn't possible. It's just that they weren't specialized in it. They looked at everything through the lens of coping and managing. They were like, okay, if somebody's experiencing these symptoms, you give them this. This will provide them relief. And so saying, okay, yeah, but how do I make these symptoms go away? That was even just outside of their paradigm. Again, that could be anybody. That could be a doctor, that could be a therapist, that could be a coach. It doesn't really matter what the profession is. But if you're in the process of trusting them, the first thing to ask is, can you overcome this? And if they say, yeah, you can overcome it, then, well, you have the most basic fundamental baseline, which is, yeah, okay, they know, you can recover from this. And that's a great starting point. Now, the second thing is also a very important question, which is, have you had experience of helping people overcome this, right? Because someone can say, yeah, you can overcome this, but that doesn't mean that they know how to help people. Remember what I mentioned when it comes to qualifications? One of the things with qualifications is experience, right? And one of the other things is outcomes. Do you have the outcomes to show that you know what you're doing? And so when you're looking for a recovery specialist, ask them, do you have people that have recovered? Show evidence, right? One of the things we do in our channel is that, we post success stories. We have people come on the channel. We have maybe 4 or 5 questions. If you watch these success stories, you'll see it's the same question each time. What happened? How did it start? What did you try? What helped you recover? What's the advice you would give somebody else? That's it. Very neutral. We don't tell them to say anything. We don't tell them to discount anything. We always say it's your story. You share it. It's very important that I would say that if you're looking for a guide to see, do they have the qualifications behind it? Now, the third thing I thought was very important for myself, which is, have you personally experienced this? Have you experienced any symptoms similar to this or experienced what I'm going through, right? It's important to understand that you don't need to look at symptoms one at a time, be like, oh, okay, I have 9 out of the 10 symptoms, so this person's not the right fit. I need someone that has the exact same symptoms I have. Don't look at it that way. They could have their own version of their own symptoms, but the problem is still the same, right? It's kind of like having the flu. 2 people can have the flu, have 2 different symptoms, but still have the same underlying problem. And so I've always found personally is that when someone has gone through it, there is a deeper level of knowing that you can't just get from reading a book. Is that a deal breaker if they haven't? No, but then it's very important for me to see their results. I want to see how many people have you helped. If you helped so many people and you're just that good at what you do, I'll let that pass. But I've always found that when people have experienced this, there's a deeper level of understanding. There's a deeper level of empathy. They just get it more than just reading about it in a book. And then one of the most important questions, and this is my favorite one, which is basically just saying, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Like, why am I experiencing these symptoms? That's such a simple question. And you would think people would have the answer to this, but you'll be surprised. One of the things that I used to do when I was enrolling people into the mentorship team, now I have a team that does it, but I would know very quickly when somebody was stuck just by asking them this question, which is, hey, why do you think this is happening? Now, if they start bringing up shadow work or things like, hey, your inner child is dealing with this, like this is manifestations of some, thing that happened when you were 4 years old, run away. I'm sorry. I've gone down that road. You've probably gone down that road. It doesn't work. There is a time and point to talk about these things, but it's not when you're stuck, not when you're finding a guide. Once you're much better, then you can dive into these spaces. And honestly, your results will be better when you view these things later. If they're not able to give you a clear answer of what's happening, and they're not able to help you understand, and it's something that's believable, that like you understand, you're like, yes, that makes sense, then they're not the right recovery specialist. And so these are the basic questions I would ask. Because the truth is, there is no certification, not yet. A little secret is that, we've been working on creating a certification behind the scenes. We want to work with universities and we want to work with institutes and methodology that we teach and show that there's actual results here. But right now, the truth is that when it comes to anxiety recovery, it's very difficult, and it could be anybody. Now, if you really want to have me and my team, if you really are looking at, who has really helped the most people, and if you really resonate with a lot of these things on this channel, I'll put a link down below, and you can apply to work with us as well. You'll be speaking with our program coordinator, Rachel. She will point you in the right direction. It's really hot outside. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Last thing, if you really want to know more about the steps of overcoming anxiety, make sure to watch this video right here. I'll see you later.